Hey, St. Joseph's Consecration Day 3, and I'm sorry I need coffee this time. Turns out newborn babies don't always sleep a ton, and so sometimes we get tired. And so I think there's something about reflecting on the Holy Family implicit in that. Um, Hopefully, when I have the caffeine in my system, I could share that later. I'm sorry, I'm having to pre-record this video again. Like I said, we just kind of a crazy day, and I just don't know what it's going to be like at 3 o'clock to go live. So I kind of had a moment of solace thanks to my holy wife, and so I was just going to make this video real quick, pre-recorded. But I promise one day I am going to try to do it live on the Facebook. But I also want to say real quick, I think that this video, at least after I do the reading, when I look at the questions, might have some really explicitly Catholic, intense language. So I want to kind of give a warning there, or hopefully some kind of enticement to jump ahead to the questions if you want, because I think there's one of the questions, my thoughts on it were, it invoked a lot of, maybe what I should just say is intense Catholic thought in myself. And I don't know what to think about it. So anyway, I'll jump into day 3, and then I'll read the question and give a brief reflection of what me and my wife talked about, and just close it out. So day 3, the title is God, the Father of Heaven, have mercy on us. And it opens with a quote from St. Peter Julian Eymard. Our Heavenly Father has had only one saint to represent him on earth. Hence he bestowed everything he could on that favored saint, and equipped him with all that he needed to be his worthy representative. That was St. Peter Julian Eymard. God the Father loves you. He loves you so much that he sent his Son into the world to save you. But saving you is not all the Father sent his Son to do for you. He sent his Son to save you and make you a child of God. Through Jesus, you are able to have a filial relationship with God the Father. Through Jesus, you can cry out, Abba, Father. To be a child of God is why you were created. It's the very purpose for which you exist. And there is only one way to the Father, Jesus Christ. Only Jesus has the power to take you to the Father. Yet in God's merciful love, St. Joseph plays a very important role in your spiritual growth and journey to the Father. Consecration of St. Joseph will increase the presence of the Father in your life. We learn this truth from the life of Jesus himself. When the Heavenly Father sent his Son into the world to save us and make us his children, he selected one saint to represent him on earth, St. Joseph. Jesus, in living under the roof of St. Joseph and being his son, gave us a personal example of total entrustment to St. Joseph. Jesus loved, obeyed, and imitated his earthly father. St. Joseph is the only man that Jesus ever called father. Jesus delighted in being known as the son of Joseph. See John 6:42. We too should consider it an honor to be his children. If according to the plans of the Father Jesus needed St. Joseph, how much more do we need him too? The fatherhood of St. Joseph increased the presence of the Heavenly Father in the life of Jesus. Now, to be clear, St. Joseph is not God. He cannot add anything to the divine and eternal communion existing between God the Father and God the Son, nor can St. Joseph improve the ability of Jesus as a divine person to perpetually behold the presence of his Heavenly Father. Rather, St. Joseph was chosen to stand in the place of the Heavenly Father according to the demands of Jesus' human nature. God the Father doesn't have a human nature. Every time Jesus saw St. Joseph, heard him speak, watched him work, or witnessed his chaste love for Mary, the humanity of Jesus witnessed a perfect reflection of the Heavenly Father. This is a quote from Blessed William Joseph Chaminade. God chose to make Joseph his most tangible image on earth, the depository of all the rights of his divine paternity, the husband of that noble virgin who is mistress of angels and men. What the Heavenly Father did for Jesus, he wants to do for you. God the Father wants to entrust you to the loving paternal care of St. Joseph in a manner similar to God's entrustment of the human nature of Jesus to St. Joseph. God planned these entrustments both of Jesus to St. Joseph and of the members of the Church to St. Joseph from all eternity. They were not done haphazardly. St. Joseph is the shadow of the Heavenly Father. He was the image and reflection of the Father for Jesus. God the Father wants you to accept St. Joseph as your spiritual father as well. Jesus is the one in whom we see most perfectly the image of mercy and the love of his Heavenly Father. As he said, "He who has seen me has seen the Father." But Jesus also wants to share with us the one who was for him the earthly image of his Heavenly Father. This holy man, St. Joseph, had such towering dignity and glory that the Eternal Father most generously bestowed on him a likeness of his own primacy. That was a quote from St. Bernardine of Siena. Then it asks, that's the end of the chapter, and it asks us to read a secondary reading, which I'm not going to read because it would take like 15 minutes. And Father Calloway, the author of the book, said that these suggested readings here kind of function as a second book that you could read afterwards, or you could read in conjunction. And he kind of has them broken up for you as a suggested reading called Our Spiritual Father. It's a very great reading, but it's a long reading. It took me and my wife like 15 minutes to read it. So I figured that's too long for a YouTube video, whereas if and when you get the book, or if you already have the book, you could just, read it on your own and maybe at a briefer, a better pace than what I would do. And then it asks to pray the Litany of St. Joseph, which I posted links in the previous video. So just go back, find that link if you don't have the litany, and pray it. But real quick, I would just like to discuss the question, and then I'll get back to my family since all's going crazy. But the questions were this. So the third question from this week, and it deals with this reading, is Mary is your spiritual mother, Jesus is your brother, and Saint Joseph is your spiritual father. Have you ever thought of Saint Joseph as your spiritual father? What appeals to you about relating to Saint Joseph as his son or daughter? So that kind of ending, I feel like as a Catholic, and especially as a Catholic who's done the Consecration of Mary, the idea of thinking about Mary as my mother is something I'm very familiar with, right? Like I think, I don't feel uncomfortable calling Mary Our Lady or Our Mother. I pray the Rosary every day. I wear the brown I don't need to show you. I wear the brown scapular, miraculous medal. So I'm very devoted to Our Lady. And I've always thought of myself as devoted to the Holy Family. I actually have Jesus, Mary, and Joseph carved on the inside of my wedding ring. So I've always thought of myself as devoted to the Holy Family. But it's interesting, reflecting today's reading and reflecting on it kind of made me think, when it asked me, have I ever thought of St. Joseph as my spiritual father, that I think largely the answer to that is just explicitly kind of like a no. And just realizing that kind of shocked myself, because what's interesting is I realized, I think a lot of the times I think of the saints as almost more inspirational buddy figures than I do like as these kind of like heavenly helpers. And what I mean by that is a lot of the times, St. Thomas Aquinas, for instance, I'm a theology teacher. I like reading theology and philosophy. And so I feel like a lot of times I'm like, oh, St. Thomas Aquinas, how would you express this? Or I think St. Thomas Aquinas struggled expressing things. And I kind of get inspired by that idea. And it kind of gives me a little bit of energy to go on, to try a little harder. And I think with St. Joseph, the way I've been thinking about St. Joseph is like, oh, well, Jesus probably cried in the night. Or you probably got impatient or wanted to be impatient. Or you didn't know what to do, or you were scared. And I've kind of taken those moments of St. Joseph's life and used them as inspiration, which is a good thing, but I haven't really looked to him like I would my father or my dad. And so like an example, kind of like a personal example, I guess, is here with this coronavirus stuff. I mean, it's kind of scary. I mean, it is scary, and the idea that, I have a newborn and a toddler, and my wife had a C-section, so she had surgery. None of those people I want to get the coronavirus, even though I know we're in age ranges that are less affected, but it's still scary. And there's a powerlessness in my experience here of like, I can't protect them from this. I can wash my hands a million times. I can wipe down all our groceries, but, I'm not in control of this disease, and that's kind of scary. And so like I would think of St. Joseph's kind of flight from Egypt, or when the innocents were killed in Bethlehem. And, and I would be like, wow, you had uncertain, scary moments in your paternity as well, St. Joseph. And I would try to use that as like a moment of courage, like to kind of like pump myself up, kind of like, oh, you did this and you handled it and that's inspirational. You trusted God, so I need to trust God like you. But I haven't treated him like a dad, because I don't think a lot of times when we go to our parents, I don't think we go there with this kind of idea of like, hey, I'm struggling with money, so can you tell me cool, inspirational stories about how, you made it through tough times, which we do want those. But a lot of the times we go to our parents and we're like, I'm broke, I need money, and I don't just need a cool story, I need you to save me, I need you to help me. And there's kind of like this abandonment, this humility to stand before your parents and just be like, I'm not sufficient on my own, I need your help. And, cool stories are appreciated as well, but I can't do this without you. And I was just reflecting on this question, and it made me realize I don't know if that's how I approach the saints, but especially Joseph and Mary. I don't know if I go like, hey, Joseph, this coronavirus thing is really scary. And I can't do this on my own. I'm afraid. I need you to help me. I need you to get the graces for me and give them because I just don't have them. Instead of me trying to make my own grace. I feel like that's the thing I try to do. C.S. Lewis had a cool quote, which I just kind of remembered, so I didn't look for it before I started making this video, where he talks about how a lot of the times when Christians pray, instead of like they ask for courage, but what they're actually doing is trying to feel courageous at the moment. So they're trying to feel courageous by praying for courage instead of saying to God, like, hey, I don't have the courage, I need this grace. And I feel like that's how I've been approaching Joseph, and I want to change that starting, well, last night when I was reflecting on this, but starting today with like, hey, Joseph, I don't have this. I don't have this courage. And instead of just trying to make myself feel brave, I'm begging you to go to the Heavenly Father, to go to your Son, Jesus Christ, and beg Him to give me those graces because I just simply don't have them. And it's kind of like that powerful moment. I think a lot of this language sounds kind of dangerous to non-Catholic ears because I'm talking about abandoning my own will, my own powers into the hands of St. Joseph. Now, as we've already kind of talked about through this consecration, the idea is the whole goal here is Christ. I'm not worshiping St. Joseph. I'm worshiping the Lord. I know He's the inventor of the graces. He's the maker of the graces, but sometimes He chooses instruments to bestow those graces, and it's clear that He's chosen St. Joseph and Mary as one of those instruments, or as two of those instruments. But I need to stop trying to make my own grace and just being like, I don't have it. I need you to get it for me. And I think this is a powerful moment for us as Catholics and as Christians to say, do we believe that God actually works? It's not like that God is an inspirational figure. There's plenty of inspirational figures that I like to think about. George Washington or something, and how he was brave and how he was creative and inventive and he did all these great things when the odds were against him. That was probably a cheesy example. And you think about it, George Washington can't do anything for me but be an example. But when I ask God for courage or grace or health or whatever, do I actually trust that He has the ability to literally actually do that for Patrick Tennell in Macon, Georgia? Not just inspiring me, but actually He has the grace to give me courage. I keep using courage because I think that's something a lot of us need in this time of sickness. And so that's something I really thought about. I want to change my way. So the question is, do you think of St. Joseph as your father? And what appeals to you about relating to St. Joseph as his son or daughter? And for me, the answer to that was this ability to abandon my own pride and just say, I can't do this on my own, Father. I need your help. And that, I think, makes St. Joseph pray for me a lot more powerful than what I had been thinking of, which was just like, St. Joseph, inspire me.